Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in the matter now pending shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, ma'am.
Would you please state your full name?
I'm Jeffrey Edward Epstein, and my residence address is 6100 Red Hook Boulevard in Virgin Islands.
Have you ever been convicted of a crime?
Yes.
The sex crimes of millionaire financier Jeffrey Epstein are appalling.
I was unaware that I was going to be alone with him. I thought I was going to die.
More than 100 vulnerable teenagers and young women trapped in his depraved web.
He started touching himself.
Tonight, the Epstein Files, the latest on who knew what in the biggest sex trafficking ring in history. His elite circle of the wealthy and powerful on notice as thousands of damning new court documents are unsealed.
They will contain the names of people associated with Jeffrey Epstein.
Prince Andrew and the former President Bill Clinton have been named.
More are expected to come out.
In the last few weeks, they've linked Epstein to some very famous names and exposed some very sordid details.
There are videos that exist.
We've been investigating this scandal since Jeffrey Epstein's death in 2019. This is where Jeffrey Epstein served his sentence. That he can still shock is extraordinary.
I won't stop fighting. I will never be silenced.
As you'll see, this monster's tentacles continue to reach from beyond the grave.
What?
Refusing to answer lawyers on the grounds he might incriminate himself, Epstein thought his own silence would protect him forever. With his death by suicide in 2019 and the jailing of his former lover and right-hand woman Ghislaine Maxwell 2 years ago, Epstein's associates may well have thought the scandal was over. But after a decade of legal wrangling, more than 150 people have been publicly identified, linked to Epstein and his sex trafficking network.
He was a brilliant manipulator, not just of vulnerable girls and women. He was a brilliant manipulator of powerful men.
A really heinous crime on an absolutely massive scale that was allowed to continue and continue and continue.
On my own island, I can think the thoughts I want to think. I can do the work I want to do. I can free to explore as I see fit.
Jeffrey Epstein's vast wealth gave him access to whatever he wanted. As we now know, the globe-trotting multimillionaire created a network where young women were supplied to him wherever he went.
I realize what I am. I'm very comfortable in my own skin. What I'm really free to do is I'm free to follow my own personality.
And with his own plane and plush properties all over the world, he felt free to abuse in the privacy of his various homes.
This is New York, this is Palm Beach, this is California, this is Paris, this is London. This is wherever Epstein was touching down. He needed to have girls on constant call. In every single state or every place that he goes to, he's already got people lined up and makers making that happen.
None of this would ever have seen the light of day if it wasn't for Virginia Giuffre. Her allegations of sexual abuse against Epstein, Maxwell, and famously Prince Andrew have fascinated and repulsed the world. In 2015, Virginia sued Maxwell for defamation. These latest documents are, in the main, sworn statements collected for that case.
It's hard. It's really hard being back here.
We met Virginia 5 years ago when she bravely returned for the first time to the Epstein mansion in Manhattan.
I was abused by people that I can't even mention here. There's a lot of scars hidden behind those walls. It should be ripped down. It should be burned to the ground. Some of my worst memories are from this place.
By just how awful this story is, the damage that was done to these women is incredibly hard to even express. This has been completely life-altering for them. It's incredibly unfair that this was allowed to happen with impunity for so long.
Lucia Osborne Crowley is a journalist and author who has long covered the Epstein case. She believes the significance of the new Epstein files can't be overstated.
It's really important that we understand the difference between having these allegations swirl around and seeing that people were willing to swear to them under penalty of perjury. It's an incredibly hard thing to do, and they were all willing to do it and to swear to the truth of it.
Lucia also had a front row seat when victims testified against Epstein's co-conspirator Ghislaine Maxwell when she was convicted for sex trafficking in 2022.
A lot of what Jeffrey Epstein got away with, he wouldn't have been able to do without her helping to recruit, groom and entice underage girls.
But she wasn't just the organiser, was she? She was also an abuser herself.
Yes. So we also heard at trial from multiple victims that she was in the room when the abuse was happening and that she engaged in the abuse herself.
But the documents released by the court put the spotlight on the role played by others in Jeffrey Epstein's inner sanctum. The most controversial revelation comes from emails sent by Sarah Ransom, who was abused and trafficked by Epstein. Those emails claim she has seen video recordings made by Epstein of an unnamed friend having sex with Bill Clinton, Prince Andrew and Richard Branson. All three men vehemently refute the allegation, and in the past, even Sarah has denied the existence of the tapes. But just 2 weeks ago, she stood by her original claim in a Zoom call with Good Morning Britain.
It's no secret that everything was recorded. I've also seen recordings in his office. There are videos that exist. The people that know they exist, I'm sure are very frightened of them being released.
Fear may also explain the resounding silence from others named in this recent mass release of documents. According to thousands of pages of sworn statements by women abused by Epstein, the men now in the headlines are potential witnesses. They place them at the locations where the abuse commonly took place.
The vast majority, including all the names that we're hearing about the most, there are no allegations of criminality. They are just listed as potential witnesses.
If these people are not being accused of any wrongdoing, why have they been named?
The question is what they saw, who they met, what questions they asked themselves about why girls of that age would be in any of the Epstein homes. And if they didn't ask themselves questions about that, why didn't they ask themselves questions about that?
The documents also shed light on the alleged dark motivation of Epstein's sex trafficking to get dirt on some of the world's most influential people.
There is, for the first time, the idea that he was quizzing the girls he sent to famous people for details of what happened for blackmail purposes. That has always been the suspicion that this man had cameras everywhere, that he kept blackmail tapes. That was his leverage. So I heard about Jeffrey Epstein sort of on the social Upper East Side grapevine in New York for a couple of years around the end of the 1990s and early 2000s. You know, he was a figure of mystery in that all people really knew about him was he had kind of out of nowhere, known to be unconventional. People thought he was very good looking. And the only thing that people really knew about him, his sort of connector to the outside world, was somebody I knew. It was Ghislaine Maxwell.
With her link to English socialite Ghislaine Maxwell, Vicky Ward was the ideal journalist to profile Jeffrey Epstein. Her task in 2002 was to investigate the man behind the $500 million fortune.
My then boss at Vanity Fair magazine, Graydon Carter, phoned me up and said, you know, I've been hearing about this guy for years. Nobody knows who he is, where he got his money from, what his deal is. And that was how it all began.
But what started as a business story quickly turned sinister.
He liked to have parties with young women, but given that he was a very wealthy, at the time, you know, good-looking bachelor in his 50s, that didn't seem in itself, on the surface, so peculiar. But then I met this woman, Maria Farmer, and she told me that she had worked for Jeffrey.
Immediately recognised how significant Maria Farmer would become in the Epstein story. Certainly not the authorities, when in 1996 she was the very first to report Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell to the FBI.
Ghislaine came in to get me one evening. Ghislaine escorts me to Jeffrey's room, and he's lying there, and he goes, well, here, sit down, you know? And so right next to him, and then Ghislaine sits on the other side, and they began assaulting me. But really, while I was lying there the whole time, I'm thinking, my sister's been around these people. My sister was 16. She's been around them alone.
Maria's fears were well-based. Her younger sister Annie had also been abused by the pedophile pair.
And it was the worst thing that's ever happened to me.
But in a pattern that would be set in the decades ahead, Maria's complaint of sexual abuse against her and Annie to police was ignored.
They just kept it all quiet, put it in the bottom drawer. And they were so dismissive that I just felt daunted and I stopped.
For more than 25 years, Maria Farmer has been filling her canvas with the Epstein story, a tale of horror that began in 1995, when, as a gifted student at the New York Academy of Art, she met Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Epstein gave her a job to buy art for his New York mansion. As well, she became an unwitting witness to a steady stream of teenagers and young women through Epstein's front door. And shockingly, she had direct evidence of Maxwell scouting girls for the insatiable millionaire. What did you witness?
So several times I was in the car with her, and she would ask the driver to stop the car. And she'd dash across to the school or the park or wherever she was going, and she would like write down her phone number for a child, a young girl. And then I'd see that child at the house. And she'd say, they're auditioning. You know, I found a model in the park. And I thought it was really strange because I did see a couple girls in braces, and I've never seen a model with braces.
Do you reflect on how different life would be for so many women today if the FBI had investigated your complaints in 1996?
Yeah. I think about it all the time. I do. And it hurts a lot. And I never had children because of it. Because I didn't feel like they would be safe.
It would be another 6 years before the Farmer sisters would again contemplate speaking openly about their experiences with Jeffrey Epstein. When they met with journalist Vicky Ward in 2002, Maria and Annie were nervous. Did it take a lot for you to convince them to open up to you, to talk on the public record?
It did. There's no question. They were very afraid of these very powerful people. And I felt that at least Vanity Fair magazine was also powerful. by us publishing their allegations, that would afford them protection. And so I think that we all proceeded under that premise. And unfortunately, that premise got exploded in the worst possible way.
What blew it up? What happened?
Well, what happened as this piece was going forward, and I had to finally put all the allegations, both of the business stuff and the farmers' allegations, to Jeffrey and Ghislaine, they in their different ways went completely berserk.
Epstein was instantly menacing, a man prepared to bully and intimidate to save himself.
He treated the entire thing as a game, a really dark, twisted game. He even said to me at the beginning, okay, let's play chess. I'll be black, you be white, you get the first move. And from there, it descended into a sort of horrific game of cat and mouse. He would phone me every day. And then he told me that if he didn't like what I was going to write, he was going to have his witch doctor place a curse on my unborn children, and that was off the record. Then he told me he was going to sue me and ruin me personally. And I was just really frightened of what this man could do.
Yeah, so even though the threats he was making against you were quite preposterous, you took him seriously, like you were genuinely frightened.
Yeah, because at the end of all of this, at the end of months of digging, meeting the farmer sisters, there was still this question mark. Who is this guy?
But it only got worse when Epstein made a personal visit to Vicky's boss at the time, the editor-in-chief of Vanity Fair. Epstein got the result he demanded. Maria and Annie Farmer's allegations were cut from the story that went to print in late 2002. So as the journalist who'd uncovered these allegations and convinced these sisters to go public, what was your reaction to see that your work was not in your article?
Well, I remember bursting into tears and saying to the person who was directly my editor, we've exposed these poor women. I mean, this is unconscionable.
Was it a reflection also of an abuse of power? I mean, if Jeffrey Epstein's walked into the editor-in-chief's office, he wasn't there to say hello.
Of course. 2002 was an era in which Jeffrey Epstein and other predators, Harvey Weinstein, were running the world. And women everywhere weren't speaking up. And the idea that two men would have a meeting after which these allegations would get pulled. I mean, in the world we live in now, that is, it's monstrous.
Vicky's boss, Graydon Carter, denies being influenced or intimidated by Epstein. But either way, the Vanity Fair story didn't go anywhere near exposing the depths of Epstein's depravity.
I only got the very, very, very tip of that iceberg. I didn't get to the den of iniquity that we now know was really going on behind Jeffrey Epstein's closed walls in the mansion in New York and on his island and in Palm Beach.
Around that mansion, that's where this part of the sex trafficking ring really kind of came to life.
Palm Beach, Florida is home to some of the wealthiest people in America, an exclusive enclave for the rich and powerful, including former President Donald Trump. Jeffrey Epstein's luxurious home here graced the foreshore, its white walls and inscrutable exterior hiding a dark truth. A place where it's estimated more than 100 girls were tricked and abused, their lives changed in an instant.
School, I was straight A student, never even got a B. I played the first chair trumpet. I was the captain of the cheerleading squad. And then after I met Jeffrey, I just completely quit.
This is where you were living for a while.
Yes, this is where I was living when I met Jeffrey Epstein.
Epstein was 48 when a teenage Courtney Wild entered his orbit in 2001. At the time, she was living in this trailer park, one of West Palm Beach's poorest communities. Do you believe that Jeffrey Epstein targeted areas like this?
Yeah, definitely targeted, children like myself that were vulnerable to him and his money, and we felt like we were being helped and saved by him when ultimately he was just preying on us.
As Courtney told me in 2019, her experience started when she was brought to the millionaire by another 14-year-old to make much-needed cash. The trap had been set. What were you expecting to happen? Why did you think you were coming here?
Well, I knew that I was coming here to give a guy a massage and to make $200. I did know that. It was never told to me that I would be molested by this man or anything like that.
Inside, Courtney very soon discovered the massage was cover for a terrible, well-rehearsed crime.
We were taken upstairs. It was like a circular stairwell that led to a hallway that led to his bedroom, which the massage table was in his bedroom, bathroom. He asked us to get comfortable, to just, take our clothes off, to be in our bra and panties.
Were you abused during that session?
And so we would massage him for about 30 minutes, and then whenever he was ready, rolled over and asked the person that brought me to go downstairs and wait. And once that happened, then that's when the sexual abuse happened, yes.
You're 14 and in a completely alien situation, an incomprehensible position. How did you react?
I just remember afterwards how I felt walking down the stairs, and I just felt so dirty and so, just like a piece of me had been taken. Dirty, I felt, it was like my dirty little secret.
Virginia Giuffre's experience was eerily similar, except her recruiter was not a fellow teen, but the sophisticated and seemingly trustworthy Ghislaine Maxwell. Virginia was 16 and working at Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort when Maxwell spied her reading a textbook on massage.
She just seemed very nice, and she said, I've got a person that I know who's actually looking for a traveling masseuse. And if you want, I can get you an interview with him. If he likes you, we can get you educated. You'll be a real masseuse. And you'll get to travel and see the world. And she made it sound like it was a dream come true. And it wasn't.
Within hours, Virginia was at Epstein's Florida mansion, lured there by Maxwell's promise. It ended in a devastating sexual attack.
So put it this way, we did the back of him, we did the back of Epstein, and then when he turned over, that's when I was instructed to get undressed and have sex with Jeffrey Epstein while Ghislaine Maxwell was participating as well.
You want to take a moment?
No, I'm okay. I'm okay.
So you were abused by both of them in your very first encounter?
Yeah, both of them. I was abused by Ghislaine and Epstein. I don't mean to sound sexist in any way, shape, or form, but I expected it from a man, but I didn't expect it from a woman. And, yeah, I think that's what hurts the most.
Maxwell's role as Epstein's co-conspirator, for which she is now serving a 20-year jail term, is well known. But in truth, it went well beyond Maxwell. The pair devised a scheme to feed Epstein's voracious appetite. They lured poverty-stricken girls in with cash, fanning their dreams of a better life. According to journalist Lucia Osborne Crowley, by the time the sexual abuse began, many were too invested in their promises to get out.
This was a well-oiled machine of finding vulnerable young girls who really needed someone to look after them, and then also using those girls to try and entrap younger and younger girls. And a lot of that, it seems, was developed in Florida.
How many girls do you think you brought to Jeffrey Epstein?
At the minimum 50, but anywhere from 50 to 70 girls.
And what were their ages?
The same ages of me, 14, 15, 16. I just hold a lot of guilt and shame for doing those things. And just to know that I had any influence on that happening to somebody else, just, you know, it's just devastating and breaks my heart.
Epstein's vile pyramid scheme might have continued unchecked, if not for the stepmother of one of his teenage victims, who called the Palm Beach Police Department in 2005.
It was an incident that occurred maybe like three and a half weeks ago with one of my stepdaughters. Found out that ended up being that they went to Palm Beach to a gentleman's house, and they start off by giving this gentleman a massage, and he pays them. If he likes them and he thinks that they're pretty enough, he keeps them around to do other things. Okay. So I wasn't quite sure if there was an investigation or if you guys had any word. Well, this is the first I'm hearing of it.
That initial call was so alarming, the police launched an investigation. And it didn't take them long to uncover the revolting scale of Epstein's network.
Did Jeff know anybody's real true age, or he didn't care?
I don't think he cared. He told me the younger the better.
He asked me to take my shirt off, so I took my shirt off.
Okay, so were you in bra or were you topless?
I ended up being topless, yeah.
And he started getting a little excited about it, and he started touching himself.
During the massage, did he ask you to remove your pants, or?
Yeah.
40 victims whose ages ranged from 13 to 16. Their accounts were shocking enough. But what they found in Epstein's home was a creepy insight into his depraved life. Dozens of nude photos, a steam room, and a massage room with sex toys. Among the damning evidence were phone message pads, clearly showing a trade in young girls, scheduling them for massage appointments. And flight logs listing girls being transported aboard Jeffrey's private plane, dubbed the Lolita Express.
I think it's really important to know that it is actually much, much worse than we think.
In 2006, much to the relief of police, this predator was finally caught, a wealth of evidence amassed against him. But his own vast wealth and his immense influence saw him escape charges that should have landed him in jail for life. Instead, he served a mere 13 months when prosecutors accepted his guilty plea to the minor charge of soliciting a child for prostitution. But while he was technically an inmate at the Palm Beach County Stockade, he really just slept there.
It was essentially a slap on the wrist. He got 12-hour work release from prison every single day. Other journalists have described it as he just basically had to sleep in a crappy motel for, a bit over a year.
For many, the most outrageous part of Epstein's plea bargain was a seedy deal he struck with the Attorney General for the Southern District of Florida. It gave Epstein and any alleged co-conspirators, known or unknown, immunity from further prosecution, supposedly forever. Worse still, none of his victims were told about the deal.
How do you feel about that? To be sexually abused by a man and have the government know, and then actually, co-conspire with the perpetrator to make sure nothing happens to him is just so, it just sounds unreal.
Why do you think the government did that?
My personal opinion about that is, money, power, and I think that there was a lot of people involved in this underage minor sex ring that they were running. And I think everybody wanted it to go away.
So you believe that there was a conspiracy at play here?
Oh, absolutely.
It really is a sordid story, everything that happened in Florida, and the fact that authorities did know, did arrest him, did charge him, and he still was able to continue.
And according to Virginia Giuffre, the abuse didn't stop with Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. She was not just their sexual plaything. She was now part of their international sex trafficking ring, lent out to whomever they liked.
I was trafficked to other billionaires. I was trafficked to politicians, professors, even royalty. It was the elite of the world. It was the people who run the world. It was the most powerful people in the world.
Ghislaine was this sort of very exotic, glamorous figure who would drop in and, to be honest, name drop a lot of famous names that she'd been hanging out with. We heard about Bill Clinton and sort of all sorts of other people. And we also knew that she was very good friends with Prince Andrew, and that Jeffrey Epstein would sometimes have Prince Andrew to stay.
As a British expat in New York, journalist Vicky Ward moved in similar circles to socialite Ghislaine Maxwell, the daughter of disgraced mega-rich media tycoon Robert Maxwell. Following her father's suspicious death aboard his boat in 1991, Ghislaine moved to New York, where she started her relationship with the millionaire Jeffrey Epstein. In 2002, Vicky was assigned to write a profile of the mysterious financier for Vanity Fair magazine.
When I began reporting this piece, I actually ran into Ghislaine Maxwell, and I sort of said breezily, "Oh, Ghislaine, yes, I'm writing this story about Jeffrey and the money." And I was really taken aback when she started to cry. I'm like, why is this woman crying? This doesn't seem to make any sense. Well, I didn't know that I was, from her perspective, probably in danger of pulling back the curtain on what was an absolutely horrific criminal sexual enterprise involving both of them.
Epstein and Maxwell complemented each other perfectly. He had the money she was used to, she had the contacts he wanted. The most high profile, of course, being Prince Andrew, who is famously accused of abusing the then 17-year-old Virginia Giuffre at Epstein and Maxwell's invitation.
We went to Club Tramp and he danced with me and he sweats a lot and he smells funny. And then we get in the car and Ghislaine tells me in the car that I have to do what I do for Jeffrey for Prince Andrew. And that's when I learned what was going to happen.
There's a slight problem with the sweating because
it was a claim and counterclaim that turned this royal's life upside down. His ill-advised decision to appear on the BBC in 2019 left him, if not sweating, then red-faced. His attempt to convince us he knew nothing of the teenage Virginia fell flat when this photo, taken in 2001 in Maxwell's London apartment, resurfaced.
She provided a photo of the two of you together.
Yes.
How do you explain that?
I can't. Because I have absolutely no memory of that photograph ever being taken.
Your friend suggested that the photo is fake.
I think it's, from the investigations that we've done, you can't prove whether or not that photograph is faked or not, because it is a photograph of a photograph of a photograph. So it's very difficult to be able to prove it. But I don't remember that photograph ever being taken.
And he says that this photo is a fake, that he was never there, and that he's not his arm, And they're not his fingers?
Those are his fingers. That is Andrew. This photo has been verified as an original, and it's been since given to the FBI, and they've never contested that it's a fake. And I know it's real. And he needs to stop with all of these lame excuses. We're sick of hearing it. This is a real photo.
And that was the first time you met him?
And that's the very first time I met him. And that's right before I was abused by him.
How many times were you trafficked to him?
3 times.
Her allegations against Prince Andrew are laid bare in the newly unsealed court documents. The disgraced royal is mentioned 69 times, and not just by Virginia. Johanna Schoberg, who was 21 at the time, claims to have had her own traumatic experience with Prince Andrew. And she says she saw the Prince and Virginia together at the Epstein mansion in New York. According to British-based Australian author Lucia Osborne-Crowley, her account, given under oath, is damning of the Prince.
We also have an allegation from a separate victim, Johanna, who has said that she was groped by Prince Andrew. So that's incredibly significant because we have sworn testimony from a second person corroborating that he did engage in illegal acts relating to minors.
Do you expect Prince Andrew to be under further legal scrutiny?
I think that certainly Prince Andrew will be facing many, many, many more questions given what we've learned in these new documents. And it's really important, I think, for the authorities to look at the fact that there is a second person who's alleging that he broke the law, and whether they need to speak to those victims and other potential victims to see if there is anything that they can or should be charging him with.
I wonder if you have any sense now of guilt, regret, or shame about any of your behaviour in your friendship with Epstein?
As far as my association with him was concerned, it had some seriously beneficial outcomes in areas that have nothing to do with what I would describe as what we're talking about today.
Prince Andrew has since found regret, but continues to deny all the allegations levelled at him. He settled with Virginia Giuffre on the eve of their civil trial in 2022, reportedly for more than $15 million. In settling with her, the Prince likely thought the saga was over, but the release of these latest documents once again raises questions for him and many other Epstein associates.
Those are very, very wealthy, powerful people, and so far they've escaped without many questions being asked of them.
Billionaire financier Jeffrey Epstein has been arrested, charged with sex trafficking involving underage girls.
He could face up to 45 years behind bars.
It was a prized catch. In 2019, the roar around Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking ring was so loud, police were forced to act. Neatly befitting the lifestyle of a jet-setting millionaire, Epstein was nabbed on his private plane as he landed back in the US from Paris. For his most outspoken victim, Virginia Giuffre, his arrest was a gift more than 20 years in the making.
I never thought it was going to happen. I honestly thought he was just going to continue to get away with it over and over and over again, just like he proved so many times. So yeah, it was like Christmas in July. Big time.
But the expectation that Epstein would finally face his crimes was dashed when he was found dead by suicide in his jail cell a month later.
Disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein has taken his own life.
The bombshell development raising many new questions.
With Epstein dead, the charges against him were dismissed, denying justice to his many victims. And his co-conspirator, British socialite Ghislaine Maxwell, became the most wanted woman in the world as she went on the run.
So the idea that this woman could be involved in something as depraved and horrific as this, that was mind-boggling.
As journalist Vicky Ward and the rest of the world watched on in fascination, Ghislaine was tracked down to a luxurious New Hampshire hideaway after eluding police for a year.
Today we announced the arrest of one of the villains in this investigation.
This day to me has been like one of the best days of my life. I have not stopped smiling and crying happy tears. And I'm just, I'm elated to know that she's where she belongs.
Immediately upon Maxwell's arrest, Virginia spoke for all the victims of the sex trafficking ring.
She ruined so many lives. She belongs in jail. You want to hurt kids? That's where you go.
In 2022, Maxwell was convicted on 5 sex trafficking counts. The then 60-year-old sentenced to 20 years in jail. She has lodged an appeal which will be reviewed in March and continues to claim her innocence from jail, as she told her brother, Kevin Maxwell.
Everyone was always asking who is the real G, who's the real Ghislaine.
It's definitely not the person portrayed. I feel completely divorced from the person that people reference and talk about.
And so the biggest misconception of you?
That I'm the cruelest, meanest, horriblest person who's committed crimes.
Yeah.
And I mean, I literally haven't seen any details that are accurate.
Lucia Osborne Crowley was one of the few journalists granted access to the court to report on Maxwell's trial.
It was surprising that even at her own federal sex trafficking trial, she didn't appear to have a lot of humility and still was incredibly confident. And I certainly got the sense that she did not expect to be convicted.
And certainly no remorse.
Certainly no remorse. She basically said that she was sorry for the damage that Jeffrey Epstein had caused them, and that's all she said.
With Maxwell behind bars and Epstein dead, this case appeared to be resolved. But the recent release of these court documents shows how little we still know.
There are so many names that we are left with question marks about. What was his appeal? Why did some of the most powerful men in the world flock to him? What was Bill Gates doing around Jeffrey Epstein? I'd love to hear from Bill Clinton what he saw in Jeffrey Epstein. That would be great to know.
In all, more than 150 names have been linked to the disgraced millionaire. But apart from some denials of any wrongdoing, the silence from those identified has been deafening.
We've got evidence of sworn testimony where people are naming very, very powerful people who would have been in a position potentially to do something about what was going on here. And instead we had a sex trafficking ring that went on for at least 2 decades, possibly 3, with almost complete impunity. And so that's the point that I think we really all need to hold on to about scale here, is that not the splashiness of these names, but just how many there are, just how many people there are that victims pointed to say, this person can corroborate my story, this person can be a witness, this person met me on the island, this person saw me. And those are very, very wealthy, powerful people. And so far they've escaped without many questions being asked of them.
We'd have to assume that they're just running from this as far and as fast as they can.
Yes, well, I've been quite surprised at the silence over the last couple of weeks, if I'm completely honest. I would have thought that at least some of these people would have felt an obligation to do some explaining.
At the very least, association with Jeffrey Epstein raises questions of judgment, right? Nobody looks good for having hung out with Jeffrey Epstein now knowing everything that we know. Whether or not they should be held accountable as to whether or not there was any criminal activity. And obviously, we just don't know. One has to hope that because we now know so much more, that there is so much public scrutiny on this, that the wheels of justice will turn in a way that they definitely didn't for a very long time.
The legacy of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell is to expose a darkness too awful to imagine. But as difficult as it is to comprehend, it would seem there's even more to be revealed.
Certainly from what I know, that there are more people who aren't even on this list that either knew or potentially participated in what was going on around Jeffrey Epstein.
Do you expect that others will be charged, that others will face prosecution?
I very much hope so. I think it's really important to know it is actually much, much worse than we think and that we're comfortable accepting.